H.P. Lovecraft, the master of cosmic horror, the style that everyone wants to get right, but almost no one does. Why is that? Why is it that the Cthulhu mythos is basically the grim love child of the internet in this day and age, but the majority of attempts to translate that into pop culture tends to get it wrong? Some could argue overexposure is an issue. That or underexposure. I wouldn't be surprised if the vast majority of people who love themselves some elder gods have never actually read any of the work of Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, or any number of the pulp authors who originated and expanded on this world. And frankly, I don't blame them. That stuff is dense. And I know I'm going into heretic territory here, but not all of it is good either. It can be difficult to parse the genius from the subpar, so why does cosmic horror seem to be experiencing such a heyday while also being genuinely misunderstood by so many? I'd argue it's the monster. We love a monster, and Lovecraft created some of the best. The trouble is that the monster in Lovecraft's work was subtle, a shadow in the background that hinted at the microscopic significance of mankind. The whole point was that taking in the horror and the monster at its fullest could drive people to madness. This idea in the hands of the best creates slow, driving dread. At its worst, though, it's just another universal monster. Oh, look at me, guys, I got tentacles, so Cthulhu, so spoopy. And that's why it's hard to find video games that get the Lovecraft notion right. Instinctively, we expect video games to be faster paced and even bombastic. If you've got a millennia-old horror from out of space, there'd better be a magical sword or some damn thing that we can use to kill it. Maybe a elder bazooka. And that's just not how Lovecraft tends to work in the long run. His notion on science fiction is that space and the cosmos hold secrets so alien to our human minds that even our major victories against them are only pushing back an inevitable and indecipherable defeat. Cheery stuff. But when it comes to games that do get Lovecraft right, I tend to look more towards the adventure genre. They're story-driven, they're character-focused, and they allow for a slower, more literary pacing. What an adventure game might lack in spectacle or action, they'll tend to more than make up for it in the overall theme that you're meant to be feeling. Chronicle of Innsmouth is just such a game. Developed by Umberto Parisi and Amedeo Vesaturo, Chronicle of Innsmouth follows your protagonist as he uses the classic 9-verb style of adventure game in an effort to learn more about the forbidden and secretive New England town of Innsmouth. And right off the bat, I was impressed at the attempt that the developers made to stay true to both Lovecraft and the classic Lucasarts adventures of the 90s. The Monkey Island or Indiana Jones vibe you get from this game is absolutely perfect for those of us who loved these games in years gone by. You can tell this was made by people who adored that style, and it doesn't go unappreciated. You gotta collect items, try to combine them with each other, push, pull, and look at everything around you. There's some definite moon logic that rears its head during this game, and frankly, I'm not sure whether or not to put that under a flaw or a feature. Those old point-and-click games were basically defined by the stretches in imagination that you had to put yourself through just to progress, and I've met just as many people who love the frustration as hate it. Anyway, there are plenty of puzzles to figure out in Innsmouth, and some are simpler to figure than others. Even if you do feel frustrated by several of them, for LucasArts veterans like me, it's a good frustration. Your own non-masochistic and completely mentally balanced experience may vary. If I had any complaints about that LucasArts style when it comes to this game, however, it would have to be that it doesn't always match up with the Lovecraftian theme. The puzzles, the mystery, all of that works. However, there was almost always a lighthearted feel to the better-known LucasArts games, and the designers didn't back off from that here. There are plenty of silly little moments, including the occasional anachronism, and they're pleasant and funny in the same way Monkey Island can be, for example. The trouble with that is we're not on Monkey Island. We're investigating a cult dedicated to gods so old and uncaring that even a cursory glance at that plans and desires would leave a human being gibbering and making sandcastles out of used kitty litter. That's not to suggest that there isn't room for humor in a reimagining of the Lovecraftian world, but I don't personally know how you'd go about it without it being a tad jarring, and those moments are. If only because the designers also clearly love cosmic horror. Chronicle of Innsmouth wavers between classic adventure and cosmic horror perpetually throughout the game, but when they really get going, the moments that pay homage to Call of Cthulhu or Shadow over Innsmouth are really effective. And going from the grim, rain-soaked streets of New England to telling a group of street musicians that they rock does have a way of pulling you out. But that criticism aside, I was actually more often impressed with Innsmouth than when I wasn't. It was a satisfying, fun adventure, and yes, it had a few puzzles that drove me crazy. But if I've learned anything about classic adventure games, it's that their moon logic is a lot like the cosmic monsters of Lovecraft. Even when they're driving you completely insane, you still find yourself loving them.
Hey, Daddy, don't sink a little drinky. Daddy gets side down blue. Sneak a little drinky, sneakity-doo. Sneak a little drinky past you. Sneak a little drinky, sneakity-doo. Sneak a little drinky past you.